Hey, it's me. It's animated me. I'm your host, Andy Burrows, and it's time for another episode of Completed It. Movie reviews, pop culture, celebrity guests, and all that good stuff. Oh, and my good friend over there, Sasha Alari, as my co-host. Hey, Satch, hit the titles, brother. Hey everybody, welcome back to Completed It. We're not quite done with shows for 2025. I'm your host, Andy Burrows, and well, as you can probably see, Neil and Sash aren't here for this episode. I'm flying solo. But hey, talking of flying, it kind of goes with this episode that we're about to have. For those that have been watching Completed It for nearly a year now, we've been doing it. We've covered from Star Wars to Star Trek to Superman to Batman to everything. Well, today we find out what it's like to write one of the most iconic for one of the most iconic shows of all time. Our guest today is Star Trek Voyager writer Raf Green. Raf, how are you, sir?
Very good. Thank you for having me. How are you?
I'm good, my friend. I'm good. Happy belated holidays to you all over the world. We've been celebrating Christmas, but I hope you had good holidays, my friend.
Yeah, been,
Uh,
very nice. Rainy.
Raf's, I know, mate, I'm in England. Don't have to talk to me about rain. It's just like a thing we do here. Raf, you worked on Star Trek Voyager from 1999 to 2001. First of all, tell us a little bit about yourself. How did you get into writing? Because you don't just end up on such an iconic show like Star Trek, known all over the world. Tell us a little bit of your background and which led to you writing on Star Trek.
Well, it's kind of a funny story, and I was an actor as a kid, and then I went to college to be an actor, and was working on that even after college for a while, and made a lot of great friends in theater in college. And then after a couple years of professional acting, I just decided it wasn't for me. Like I didn't know why I was auditioning to be in things I didn't want to be in. And I turned to wanting to do my own thing. So I started a band, and I also was making artwork, and those were sort of the two career paths I was pursuing. But to supplement my income from both of those things, I had a dog walking business. So I would drive around LA in my pickup and throw dogs in the truck, and we go on these big hikes. And at one point, my truck broke, which was my doggy school bus, and I needed it to to make a living beyond the music and the art. And so I went to a friend of mine who was probably the richest guy I knew at the time. He was a Emmy-winning TV writer, and I said, "Hey, dude, my doggy school bus broke. Can you lend me some money?" And he's like, "Well, you know those guys over at Star Trek. Why don't you make up a story and they'll give you $10,000?" I was like,
As you do.
and I was like, "Oh yeah, well, thanks. I was actually hoping you'd lend me the money and I could fix my truck." But it's true. I knew Ken Biller, who I'd gone to college with, and he was starting his first year of being the co-showrunner. And Ken had been a good friend of mine in college. He directed a play I was in and things like that. And I also knew Brannon Braga, who was the co-showrunner, because Brannon used to throw these crazy Hollywood parties, and my band would play the parties. So I called them up and I said, "Hey," and at this time, Voyager was in season 5.
Hmm.
And so if you think about all the different seasons of Star Trek, that was a lot of stories about spaceships flying around in space. And they were actually one of the few shows in Hollywood that was taking open pitches, just because it was hard to come up with new ideas for
Yeah.
what people could do on trapped on a spaceship. So I said, "Hey, I hear you guys are taking pitches. Maybe I could make up some stories for you." And so This was a long time ago. I couldn't like, go on cable or go on iTunes and order up the episodes. So they sent me over a bunch of VHS tapes and I watched the show. I wasn't actually watching TV at that time at all, to be honest. And I learned the show and I made up some stories and I went in and I pitched Ken and Brannon and they didn't like any of them. And uh, somehow I got the truck fixed and I went back to my life of, walking dogs and playing music and making art. And then about a year later, Ken called me up one day and he said, "Hey, remember that story about the doctor getting famous for singing on a planet, which was one of the ideas I
Hmm.
pitched?" He said, "We want to do that." I was like, "Awesome, $10,000." Um, and 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 so I got off the phone and I thought, well, gosh, I know a lot of writers in this town, and I've always written stuff. I wrote plays in college and I was an actor and all that stuff. Maybe I should try to learn how to do it. So I called Ken up and I said, "Hey, if I just tried to write it, just as a sample, would you give me some feedback and maybe I could learn how to do this?" And he said, "Yeah, yeah, let me think about it." And he called me back, I don't know, a day later, and he said, "We're giving you a freelance strip. Don't F it up." And I was like, "What?" He's like, "Yeah, we're gonna, pay you to write the script. Don't screw it up." And I was like, "But dude, I've never written a TV show before. I have no idea what I'm doing." And he's like, "Don't F it up, dude."
Don't fuck it up. Yeah.
So I don't know what you can say on your
You
podcast.
can go for it. Don't worry. You're good.
Yeah, okay. Well, don't fuck it up, was the clear message. And so I sat down. I had no idea what I was doing. I wrote I wrote a really crazy episode of what turned out to be Virtuoso. I sent it in to him and I totally had fucked it up. It was terrible. Uh, but I guess he saw in the midst of my, page-long speeches and all these other terrible things that I had done, he saw some promise in it, and he said, "I think you learn how to do this. Would you like to come on staff as a staff writer for the second half of the season?" And I was like, "Oh my God!" I
Oh
mean,
yeah.
uh, it was really. It was weird. I know this is a very frustrating story for lots of people who've tried to break into the business for years and put so much effort into it. But I didn't have any desire to be a TV writer at that time. I was trying to be a rock star or an artist. But the idea of making what to me seemed like a lot of money and, working on something that sounded fun, even if I didn't know how to do it, and having health insurance, which I didn't have. I know you in England don't understand that, but
I've got a lot of American friends, and they're scared to break their arm out there because it's going to cost them a
yeah,
fortune.
yeah, it's crazy. So that's it. So I ended up with a little office on the Paramount lot, and crazy. All the first TV scripts I ever wrote were produced. Like, what
Wow.
a crazy way to learn how to be a writer. It was very hard, and it was Ken's first season running a TV show. He's subsequently run many, many others and, done amazing things. Unfortunately, it took me along with them on some of them. But it was a stressful time for him. And I got yelled at a lot. But yeah, it was an amazing place. Basically, it was like me going to college, you
Mm.
know, and with all these incredible people who went on from Star Trek. I mean, that Voyager writing staff and actors and directors, went on to do really impressive, amazing things. Many of them, most of them.
Mm.
Uh, it was it was really cool, and for 25 years, that's what I ended up doing after that.
Wow, because yeah, you were on season 6 and 7. of Star Trek. I've watched all the episodes that you've done on Paramount Plus. Got up and watched them this morning. Big Star Trek fan anyway, but when you like know that you're interviewing someone that wrote, when you're watching it, you're thinking, "Wow, I'm literally in a few hours going to be chatting to the guy that wrote these episodes." When you like you mentioned that they're like at the start of the show, you'd never done it before, and with Star Trek being such an iconic show, and there's only so many stories you can write about a spaceship in space. How did you go about your writing and thinking up these storylines? You had like you say, you had the one with the Doctor singing and him wanting to leave Starfleet and things like that, etc., etc. Talk me through your thought process of right. This is Star Trek. You know that millions and millions of people are going to be watching this. Is there added pressure when you're writing a Star Trek episode? What's the process you go through as a writer on such an iconic show?
Yeah, well, the first attempt to make up the shows, as I said, I just sort of learned the show from the VHS tapes they sent me, and learned the characters. And I guess because of my background of being an actor, there are lots of things about writing and storytelling that I knew from the other side of the scripts. But I think it was probably fortunate that I didn't know Star Trek very well. I
Hmm.
knew original series, which I loved and watched over and over again as a kid, and even in college, we used to love watching, the original. So that was sort of my love for the show. I didn't know Next Generation. I didn't know Deep Space Nine. I didn't know Voyager when I started. So I think maybe, ignorance might have been a little bit of an advantage there.
Yeah.
There was no pressure, that not that much pressure, except I needed my truck fixed when I
Yeah, I wanted to
made
walk
up
my
the
dogs.
first episode. Yeah, so uh, um, I think probably Virtuoso, the story about the doctor getting famous for being a singer, was just sort of me saying, "Hey, I'm trying to be a rock star," and I and knowing that the doctor loved music, that was just sort of an idea. And I think what I learned from being in the room, was that I had a natural instinct for coming up with stories that Ken and Brannon liked.
Mm,
I didn't know how to write good scripts. I didn't understand all the rules of Hollywood script writing. That took a long time and a lot of work. But I have a lot of story credits for a season and a half, and it's just because I would come up with ideas. I mean, I don't know where they came from, just sort of I think I have a good instinct for story, and maybe have a good instinct for stories that Ken likes, because
mm.
basically that's why I keep have worked for Ken for so many years. Is he seems to respond to my story ideas. And uh, I went and watched two of the episodes myself. I watched the first one and the last one before meeting you, and a couple things occurred to me, which one is, as I have worked in Hollywood for a long time in dramas for the most part, uh, there's a lot of violence and a lot of killing.
Hmm.
I don't like that, and I don't
Okay.
I don't want to be part of that, actually. I don't think putting that into the world is makes the world a better place.
Especially the world we're living in now. Yeah, you got a point.
Yeah, I mean, I think that Hollywood teaches people things, teaches
Hmm.
people how to solve problems, teaches people what heroes are, how to be a good person, how to be a strong person. And if it's always you're strong because you can kill a lot of people, what kind of message is that? So I hadn't remembered all the stuff we did so well, but I was really happy to see that both of the episodes that I watched had nothing to do with violence, really, or
Mm.
killing, or stories about other things. And so that's a wonderful thing about Star Trek, is it's sort of almost like these biblical parables, and about good and evil, and accepting other kinds of people, and
Were you aware of that when you were writing, Raf? Were you aware of, look, I want to go down this path of writing. I don't want to be phasers and guns and violence, etc., etc. Does that go through your thought process when you were writing an episode?
I wish I could say yes.
Yeah, but no.
But, but no, this is something I've come to
Now,
later.
yeah.
You know, I because I've written a lot of violence in
Hmm.
25 years. And it was something it occurred to me, I don't know, maybe 10 years ago or something. It really started to hit me that that was not something I felt good about. So, well, for example, one of my strongest memories of working on Star Trek was I can't remember which episode, second or third episode I wrote, there was a big space battle.
Hmm.
And I remember like, okay, this is hard to write, and how do you even put this on the page? And I remember the first time I saw the stuff come in from the special effects guys who would put it on the screen. And I was like, oh, I cannot believe what I'm seeing,
Mm.
like how did this go from a few words on a page to this incredible sequence that these special effects guys have put together? So, and that I would say that's the other thing that really hit me going back and watching these episodes is it's almost like going back to high school and all these people that I know,
Reminiscing.
many of
Yeah.
them are still part of my life and who I have such great fond feelings for. And uh, um, and that's been the greatest thing about being in this business is just working with all these incredible people, and it's such a team effort. And special effects guys and actors and directors and costume people, and the first time I was on set with people in alien makeup, I was, I mean, it's absolutely mind blowing to be standing next to some crazy, Star Trek alien, because in person they look just as
Yeah.
extraordinary as
Were you
they
on
are.
set all the so were the writers, is it like I've seen a lot of documentaries about movies. We've been very fortunate on this show. We've spoke to writers, directors. Were you on set for a lot of the filming in case things needed tweaking or they quite didn't like this? Or was that a process? Or were you, once the script was written, it was pretty much over to them guys? And if they wanted to tweak it, they'd done it themselves? Or did you have much input on, look, maybe this bit doesn't work or we need to take this out? I mean, we see it on the screen for 45 minutes, but the process you must go through to write an episode is obviously a lot longer. What's the actual filming aspect of it like for a writer? Are you there when it's being filmed?
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the great things about TV. I mean, the system is changing, and I think unfortunately, more like movies, writers are starting to be
Hmm.
pushed out because of the timing. But in the old system, writers are in movies, directors are the king. You just send them a script, and five
Yeah.
people write it, and they go make it, and who knows if the writer's even there. But in TV, I think because a lot of times the long form nature of the storytelling, writers are producers as well. Um, I would say my favorite part of being in this business has actually been the on-set part. So in on Star Trek, it was a little bit different because first of all, I was brand new. I was
Hmm.
just a writer on that show. Um, and also, we were shooting on the Paramount lot, so you could certainly go down and visit set if you had time. But we wrote 24 episodes, I think, for
Hmm.
each season. So we were in the writers' room all the time, and you couldn't spend that much time on set. Like you couldn't be there for your whole entire episode.
Wow.
On subsequent shows, I've always been there for the full shooting of each of my episodes, and that's a great. So you really, that's why writers are also considered producers in television.
Because you're seeing your words come to life. So if you see something you don't like, do you have the power to say, hang on a minute, stop? Do you tell the director, hey, maybe that doesn't quite fit in there? Is that something that you could have done?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, there's a showrunner.
Hmm.
So on Star Trek that was Ken and Brannon, and then Ken season 7. And so that's really the final say. But yeah, you sit right next to the director, and there are all sorts of things, and you're part of the costuming and the casting, and and Ken was great. Even on Star Trek, I was part of the casting process. Uh, and one again, going back to having watched my first and last episode, the last episode, the one about Neelix going back with the
Hmm.
Tlaxian, basically his last day on Voyager, because that was, I think there were only two more episodes of Voyager after that, two or three. The writing room was over by the time that script was in
Gotcha.
production. And so I did get to sit on set. That was my first time to be on set for every single shot. And that was really amazing because the director was LeVar Burton.
Geordian and
And
Ford. Yeah, I was going to ask you about that.
yeah, and who I subsequently worked on another show with Perception. And LeVar is literally probably the nicest human being on the whole entire
I'm
planet.
trying
I
to
mean,
get him on this show. I've DM'd him a million times.
I can't tell you what a good guy he is. And so that was as sort of a baby writer's introduction to being a
Hmm.
producer, to have him be the director I got to sit next to and work with was, just such a privilege, and really learning from not only someone who's such a great professional at it, but just such a kind human being. Uh, so,
Did it
you know,
help that he had been on Next Generation and obviously been involved in the franchise for years? Does that help, do you think, when you go into being it? Because Jonathan Frakes has directed many a thing with Star Trek. He done some of the Picard episodes. Does it help that you've been there, done it, and now you're behind the camera, knowing a franchise that you know so well? Is that something that benefits you as a director, would you say?
oh yeah, for sure. Just because all these shows have their, well, particularly with Star Trek, there's so much, or any sort of sci-fi show, there's a lot of complexity to the world and to the backstory and to, the science and or the sci-fi, the history of the characters, but also just a feel for what the franchise is supposed to feel like is what it's supposed to the vibe
Hmm.
basically. Uh, uh, but LeVar's a really talented, amazing guy, and he makes directing like he's the only director I know who says action please. You know,
Very polite, yeah.
that's the kind of guy he is. But so that was really wonderful, and yeah, absolutely, particularly with these long running franchises like that. I think you know having been part of it certainly is a big plus. Is
Mm.
is
Obviously Star Trek's such a long running franchise. Obviously, we've got Star Trek Starfleet Academy getting set to launch. I think it's like January the 14th, January the 15th on Paramount Plus. What's the biggest difference, would you say, Raf, between writing when you were writing for such a show like Star Trek to now? I mean, what would you say's changed the most in the business? Like you said, you were getting sent VHS tapes. I mean, the access now is incredible. I mean, you literally, like I say, I sat here this morning, turned on Paramount Plus, watched the 7 episodes that you. I was like, easy peasy. What's the biggest difference, would you say, between writing for a TV show now than it was when you, like you say, when you first joined Star Trek?
Well, I don't know the exact details on the current production schedule and things like that for Star Trek, but in general, what's happened is with the advent of streaming and these uh, big streaming companies like Netflix and Amazon and Apple, it's really changed the whole nature of the way TV shows get made. And uh, you know, unfortunately for people like me, it's meant for one thing, there's a lot fewer jobs.
Mm,
And it's a little bit like what happened to the music industry is in that um, the model for where the money comes from has just changed. So that there's basically, even though it does seem like there's um, lots of content out there, there's a lot. It's not as easy to monetize that content. It's not just like you're running, big companies are paying for commercials, which pay for the shows,
Hmm.
have, subscriptions and things like that, and no one's or besides Netflix, people haven't really figured out how to make it profitable. So one thing is there's just a lot of cost cutting in the ways that these shows are being made, and I think that uh, you know one of the things that's happening with a lot of shows, and I'm not sure if this is true for Star Trek, I wouldn't be surprised if it is to some degree, is that there's fewer writers and that the shows tend to be written in advance.
Right.
So a lot of times what they'll do is they'll have a writer's room where they, maybe they'll write two or three or episodes just to get the show greenlit to be made. So you're already ahead of schedule before you even start having a real room. And then they'll, write all or most of the other shows before they start production. And so that's one of the reasons writers aren't always on set anymore. There are fewer writers because it's not, first of all, there's fewer episodes of almost all these shows, right? An
Yeah, agreed. Yeah.
average season order is 10 episodes now, probably.
Is that a
Uh,
fan thing, do you think? Attention span nowadays doesn't seem, it's all TikTok and Twitter and Instagram. Is that a, like you say, Star Trek, Voyager and Deep Space Nine, Next Generation had, God knows how many episodes, ran for years
yeah,
and years and years.
the sort of the model used to be 22 episodes or
Hmm.
24 episode seasons. And, you know, there's a lot of factors in why this has changed, but the bottom line is basically just money. It's harder to make money off of dramatic content, right? Like I said, it's just like musicians used to be able to make a lot of money because you sold records or you sold
Hmm.
CDs. It was an actual product that got sold, and TV writers and movie writers made money because you sold movie tickets or you sold DVDs or you sold VHS tapes or you sold commercials on your uh, broadcast
Hmm.
network. Um, but none of that's true anymore.
It's
So
on
all
Spotify, Apple Music. Yeah. See, I could make a music video, put it on TikTok, and you can be, geez, we've just seen someone get in a boxing ring and fight a former world heavyweight champion solely based on the fact that he started a YouTube channel.
Yeah. So, I mean, every now and then someone ends up, hopefully you, getting rich and famous off of a podcast. But it's not sort of the same, there's not the same system for
Mm,
paying for these things. And TV shows, at least in the way they used to be made, are extremely expensive.
mm,
And one of the biggest expenses is writers. So the fewer writers you have and the shorter time period they work, uh, the more money you save. And there's all sorts of other places, of course. So the industry is changing a lot. I'm sure that that impacts a show like the current Star Treks. I'm not, I know one or two people who have continued to be involved, but I don't really stay in touch enough to know the details of, there are still some shows out there that are working closer to the old system, but even those shows, I'd say, if nothing else, they're making a lot fewer episodes.
mm. Would you say it's harder for writers now within the, because there's plenty, we've got a couple of guys, Neil and Sash, who co-host this with me. They've made like independent movies, their knowledge of their movies, and they want to get into the business. Is it something, even with the technical age that we live in, is it harder to get into the industry because there are so many people that want, people say to me all the time, Andy, your podcast is great. Why is he not doing this, this, and this? And I try and tell them there are thousands of people doing what we do. We just, we're like, we do this as a hobby. We've been very lucky. We've spoken to some people that have been in some Hollywood blockbusters. I get to do things like this with you. But in a way, with retrospect, is it harder now because the industry is so saturated than maybe back in 97, 98, 99, where it was a case of, hey, look, let's give this a guy a job on based on his writing and his writing ability. Now, oh, this guy's got a lot of followers on Instagram or TikTok or etc. etc. That's how people are getting. We talk about AI acting now on this show. That could potentially take over in the next 10 years. Is it good and bad, the modern world that we live in, would you say?
Well, I'd love to find the good. I'll try to think of what the good might be. But look, I don't want anybody, to feel too bad for me or anybody else who's been lucky enough to have a good run in doing all these really exciting, fun things that I've gotten to do. But for me, it's over. I haven't had a job in a few years. Many of my friends have not had jobs in a few years. So and this happens throughout history because of technology. There were people that were silent movie stars and the talkies came along and they disappeared. And, radio people got replaced by television and,
Hmm.
vaudeville got replaced by silent movies. So, these things happen. But if you the system that I worked in is very quickly dying. So if
Mm.
you wanted to do what I did, from 1999 to 1923, or I'm sorry, to 2023, I, you know, I just don't think it's a realistic thing to hope for. I think that uh, that sort of making a lot of TV episodes, having a lot of money to put towards those episodes, having a big writing staffs. Um, you know, it's just not. That's not what's out there right now. That's
Mm.
that's not how the system is working, and the places that still operate that way, the big American networks, CBS and ABC and Fox and stuff, they're very quickly dying, and they have,
Mm.
their viewership. The young kids are not watching that stuff, and uh, the flip side is, and this is true for music and probably other kinds of creative things, that it's you can go out and make this stuff yourself now.
Yeah.
Now, as to whether you can make money doing it, that's a big question, but you can make an incredible movie on your iPhone and you can, upload it to YouTube. And if it goes viral, you can, so there is same with music, right? They used to have to raise a lot of money and go in an
Yeah.
expensive studio and all that kind of stuff. And now you can, do incredible stuff by yourself on your computer. So uh, I think that in terms of offering people a ability to be creative on their own, this is a wonderful time in terms of being able to make a living as a writer, an actor, a musician. That's getting much harder.
Mm. Raf, one thing that I've got to mention, you wrote a movie for George Clooney and Matt Damon.
Well, no.
Kind of right, yeah, yeah, I kind of got the gist of it this morning. I was like, holy shit, that's something to
Uh,
put on the
well,
resume, right?
I did actually write a movie for George Clooney, but it never got made. But I worked on for when George Clooney and Steven Soderbergh
That's
had
it.
a company. I wrote a movie for them. That wouldn't appear on any of my internet stuff because they never made it, but at least I got to write it. It was called Imaginary Friends. It was about a little girl who has sort of a smoking, drinking, cussing imaginary friend, and I guess maybe that was more challenging.
Then Star Trek, yeah, I know, right?
Uh,
Um,
but but I did work on Syriana. I didn't write it. I worked with Steve Gagan, who's a good friend of mine and a wonderful writer and director. And I did help him with the scripts a little bit or give him feedback, and maybe, there's a couple ideas of mine that might have slipped in there, but I didn't write it. I love, being part of it though, and
mm,
Steve's
most
amazing.
definitely.
Yeah.
What would you say to anyone now, Raf, that wants to get into TV writing? Because do you watch TV shows now? Do you watch it for the TV show? Or do you sometimes, does your writer mind kick into overdrive, and you're like, really? Did they write that? Or sometimes you might watch a show and think, this is great writing. I mean, I rewatched like The West Wing all the time, and
Mhm.
I'm very much a 90s TV guy. And I watch something like The West Wing, and it still holds up. Now, I've got people, I'm 40, nearly 46 years old. I know people in their 20s, and they say to me, oh, Andy, like, because they know what I do for this, suggest a TV show that I can watch from start to finish that I'm going to enjoy. And I always suggest to them The West Wing because I think the writing on that is
Mhm.
incredible. What's it like for you when you watch TV shows? Do you watch them as the writer? Do you watch them as the fan? Do you judge it like on certain things? It must be different how you watch TV to how I watch TV sometimes.
Yeah, I do think that that happens to everybody, right? If you, anything you do, like like I said, I was an actor for a long time, and at a certain point, it became really hard for me to like go see a play
Hmm.
because I could, you want to lose yourself and just be part of it, and when you know too much of the workings behind it, sometimes that can be tough. I'm really I'm horrible. I'm really hard to please when it comes to scripted stuff. But if, I do constantly find that there are amazing things out there being made. I actually am a huge fan of British TV and films. And, one of I mean, probably most of my favorite recent or TV shows have been British or have been Brits
Hmm.
working in America. I thought Normal People was extraordinary. Again, there's a show that's they did, I don't know, 6 or 7, 8 hours.
Hmm.
There was no shooting, there were no guns, there was no, they told a really good story
Story.
just about a relationship, right? That was just about people being human beings and I've been fortunate enough after Star Trek. Uh, Ken and I did a few shows that we made in Europe. We did Legends with Sean Bean, who was
Oh,
incredible to
what an
work with.
actor.
And we've shot that in Prague, and we did 2 seasons of Genius, one about Albert Einstein, one about Picasso that we shot in Prague and Budapest and Paris. And so I got to work with a lot of wonderful European uh, actors, British actors. Uh, and so I really, I think I'm an Anglophile. I really have a taste for,
You're one of us.
yeah, I mean, aesthetically, I definitely am. I think you guys have more subtlety and a little bit more sophistication than most American shows. So,
Oh, I really appreciate that, man. If you had to get back into writing nowadays, you mentioned earlier the guns, the violence, etc., etc. Would it change your writing style because the demand of what TV wants now and what film wants? I mean, we're sitting down reviewing The Housemaid later on next week. Probably one of the best movies I've seen of 2025. Again, that was based from a book. I mean, would your writing style have to change now for 2025, soon to be 2026? If it's something that you would keen to get back into, or would it be the fact that, hey, look, I'm not sure about the industry now?
it's really like a case by case basis,
Hmm.
a project by project. A huge amount of it has to do with who you're working with. So I've certainly written. I wrote a little movie that I'm still trying to make. It's actually, I told you I'm an Anglophile. It's set in, it's kind of about an Agatha Christie type of
Oh,
character.
okay.
Um, and I've written a bunch of pilots that, we try to push along. If look, I'll be totally honest. If someone came to me and offered me a job right now, I would probably I don't know, depending on the project, I would probably go for it
Hmm.
because I could use the job, I could use
Yeah.
the work, use the dough. But unfortunately, what I have seen and what's come to me, I know this is not like it's not everything that's out there, but in Hollywood right now, this idea of dramatic storytelling being connected to violence and murder.
Hmm.
It's not just like theoretical, it's like almost algorithmically
Hmm.
demanded. So I've actually had meetings with executives where they told me, how many people they're supposed to kill every episode.
Oh wow.
And yeah, I know I'm not kidding either.
Yeesh.
And that's just like, that just really, like I said, I don't think that's making the world a better place. I think
Mm.
it's bad for the world. And so, you know, there's this thing. Do you want to put bad stuff into the world, and do you want to fill your bank account? So
Yeah.
uh, I hope that changes. Things go cyclically in this
Yeah, I
business.
think the world we live in, Raf, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, they're good and they are bad as well because, for the good, I get to do things like this. I found you, I reached out, we're doing this. Internet's great for that things. I'm getting to sit here with someone that's wrote one of my favorite TV shows of all time. And you flip it and you look at the bad side of the internet and it's influencing a lot of people in the wrong way. So yeah, yeah, you are right in what you say, my friend. Raf, just finishing up with Star Trek, my friend. What's your fondest memory about working on the show?
Oh, I would definitely say working on that last Homestead episode. I mean, there are many, many great memories, but that was it took me a year and a half, and I finally got a solo credit. I finally had learned how to do it well enough that Ken didn't say,
You fucked it
I have
up.
to write this and put my name on it too, which he totally deserved to do whenever he did. Um, so at that level, I felt like I'd gotten much better at my job. Working with LeVar was amazing. Julianne Christie, who plays Dexa, Calaxian that Neelix falls in love with. I was there to cast her, and she's become a lifelong friend of mine ever since then. I just adore her. My friend Rob LaBelle from college played another character in that episode. And so that was really, and I guess the pressure was off.
Hmm.
We'd season, right? Or finished the series actually. That was one of the last episodes of Voyager period. Season 7 was the last
What's it like
season.
when you watch it back and you get feedback and it's like really good feed? I don't Voyager didn't, in my opinion, was one of the most underrated Star Treks out there. I thought it was incredible. I was disappointed that they didn't turn that into a movie. Like Next Generation got quite a few movies. Deep Space Nine never did. For me, Voyager's still got, and I know they put Janeway in some animated stuff most recently, but for me, I would have loved to have seen that turned into movie format because I think it's quite easy to do with Star Trek. Is that something that you would have been interested writing for? Imagine a Star Trek Voyager movie.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that in my day, most of those jobs fell to Brannon Braga, and
Hmm.
more power to him. I love Brannon. I think he did an amazing job with the movies he wrote. And um, well, I can't remember. There was another part to it. What was the first part of
No, I was
that
just saying,
question?
would like obviously like
Oh,
I'd like
the feedback.
yeah.
The one thing
It
that
must be
was,
good for you as a writer because everyone, like you say, everyone loves Star Trek, but there
I
hasn't
mean,
really been a franchise where they've gone. There's been the more modern ones, but when you look at Generation, Deep Space Nine, etc., Star Trek Voyager, every episode you're just like, this is good TV. I don't think you can say that about all TV now.
yeah, I mean, the really incredible thing about having worked on Star Trek is, I went on to write, I don't know, 6 or 7 other shows, maybe more than that. And I'm really proud of a lot of them. I think, like Legends and Genius were particularly really well made, well written shows, with movie stars and lots of Emmy nominations and all that kind of stuff. But for fan base and fan reaction,
Hmm.
nothing touches Star Trek. The only thing that was close is Legend of the Seeker that I did after Star Trek. So, sci-fi and fantasy fans are really passionate.
Oh yes.
They really know their characters. I mean, they will make up their own stories. They will, they're really invested, and that's really cool. And so yeah, like here we are, what is it, 26, 27 years later,
Talking
and
about it.
people are still talking about it and watching it. And that's, yeah, that really feels good. And I hadn't looked at any of them in a long time, and it did. I don't know that they feel like the best. I think I became a better writer over time, but it was nice to see that they had both of those episodes that I watched, and hopefully the others, had something good to say, had some
Mm.
positive message in them. They were about, you know, real human connection and love, and having to say goodbye, and all these things that I think are really beautiful and meaningful, and I feel great about them being out in the world, and very lucky, that I got to be part of that, because it definitely is its own world of passionate fans.
Oh, most definitely. And Raf, the biggest compliment I can give, it's going to be something that's going to be around forever. With the online streaming, and when me and you are long and gone, Star Trek is still going to be a thing. It was here way before us. It'll be here way after us. And when someone's watching Star Trek Voyager, that's an episode that you wrote. So you played such a pivotal part in such an iconic show, putting from what was on a bit of paper to the screen. I couldn't do it. I love watching it and I love talking about it. But for me, it's such an art form. I'm a huge movie lover. I go 2 or 3 times a week, sometimes 4 times a week. For me, it's more of the art form of someone writing something down, but to physically get that onto the screen and get it acted, get it produced, and then put in these special effects. I think what people like yourself do, I think it's pure genius. I mean, everyone's like, "Oh, I could do this better." It's like when you watch a game of football, or you watch, "Oh, he's rubbish." No, you couldn't do it better. If you could, we'd all be doing it. So I think what something like you do, my friend, be very, very proud of the body of work that you've done, my man. It was awesome to just sit down and chat to you, man. I really appreciate you coming on the show.
Oh, it's my pleasure. And I just want to say two things about that. One is, it really is not something anybody can sit down and do, and I couldn't sit down and do it. It is a craft. It is one of those things where, I was fortunate that I learned the craft while I was being paid. I mean, that is just an incredible privilege. But I wasn't good at it for a very, very long time. And so I've taught writing over the years, and yeah, I've had wonderful, talented, brilliant, creative students, but nobody sits down and writes a teleplay
Mm.
the first time, or even, the 10th time. It's one of those things, just like, learning to be a car mechanic, or a sculptor, or anything. You got to put in the hours and learn how to do it. But, for me, I was just very, very lucky to be included in something that was already,
Iconic.
so so iconic and well
Yeah.
established. And as much as the writing for TV is a craft, all the other things, the acting and the directing, and I mean, the work that the makeup people do on that show,
Oh,
just
sheesh.
absolutely extraordinary. Like, Ethan Phillips, Neelix, had to get every day that he worked on that show, he had to be in the makeup chair at like 2 in the morning,
Oh,
you know, and so these are makeup artists that are working these crazy hours week after week, month after month, and actors, but it's just that's what's really cool about film and television, is that it's all these people, all these talented craftspeople, working together as a team, and that's what I feel most lucky to have been a part of.
oh man, Raf, I've been very lucky to sit down and talk to you, my friend. I really, really do appreciate you taking the time out of your day to not long after the holidays as well to come down and chat with us, my man. I really do appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for having me, and happy 2026.
Yeah, and you, my friend. Anyone that wants to check out our content, just go onto YouTube, type in Completed It Podcast. It's where you can find this episode and all our other episodes. We are dropping our review of The Housemaid. That is coming out in the next couple of days as well. Tremendous movie. If you haven't seen it, I urge everyone to go and check it out. Great, great film. Me, Sash, and Neil will be back with more Marvelous Mondays in a couple of weeks. We've got a few more of them dropping. You can also find us on Twitter. Yes, I still call it that. At Completed It Pod is where you can find us, and Completed It Podcast on Instagram. But everyone, thanks for tuning in. Till next time, stay safe.